Geeks and Gamers, Matt Lemke here with Erik Mona, the face of Paizo.
Such as it is.
It seems. Every time I get to do an interview with Paizo, it's usually you, so you're the face of Paizo. And we're at Gen Con, and we're going to chat about things like the Occult Adventures that just released today. Maybe a few other things like the Bestiary 5 that's going to be coming out. Or do you guys prefer Bestiary?
I say Bestiary because there's no A in Bestiary, so, but many, if not most people say Bestiary, so.
Well, I looked it up.
You say tomato, I say tomato.
Dictionary.com has it both ways?
Yeah, I think it is both ways.
So anyway, so I know from previous discussions with somebody, I don't remember who, that Occult Adventures is probably one of your favorite releases.
Well, it's certainly a book that I feel like I had a lot to do with. You know, I'm the publisher at the company, so I oversee the editorial staff, but it's not every day that I'm actually writing portions of the book and actively involved. But this was how Pathfinder was going to handle psychic magic and sort of our answer to psionics has been really important to me for a long time. I mean, this has been a book that I've been plotting out in some ways almost even before Pathfinder came out. And I say that because, you know, as an old-time D&D player, you know, there were always reasons why I didn't use psionics in my game, or why I felt like psionics weren't that popular when we would run adventures in, say, Dungeon Magazine or what have you. And so I always was sort of thinking about why is that, and, you know, the game as a whole has always had stuff like detect thoughts and telekinesis and you know, mental psychic spells on the wizard spell list, you know, and so how do you pull that off? And then one of the issues, one of the answers has always been, well, you introduce a totally different system for it, you know, it's like, oh, that maybe it's spell points, or maybe it's just a different system, and that was kind of the 3.0, well, really the first edition, second edition, third edition D&D answer. And what we decided was that actually, given a game that is as complex as Pathfinder already is, with a 576-page core rulebook and about a dozen hardcover books at this point, I sort of felt like a brand new spellcasting system was maybe more than what the audience really wanted. And so what we did is we took a lot of the themes that go with psychic power and mental combat and occultism, and to some degree almost even hedging into conspiracy theory, and put those all together using the framework of how spellcasting already exists in the Pathfinder role-playing game. So you already know the rules for how spellcasters work. So basically, Occult Adventures is about adding that flavor, and there's certainly new stuff, but it's not another 300 pages that you have to start memorizing.
And that's a good thing.
I think so.
So was one of your goals to make the psionics aspect of it still feel different than magic?
Yeah, I mean, so we sort of call it psychic magic, so we don't use the psionics terminology, we don't use any of that. A lot of that came out of like 1950s science fiction, where they were just trying to sort of come up with quasi-scientific words that would allow magic to appear in hard science fiction stories. And so our traditions that we pull from are much more like earlier pulp era stuff, you know, sword and sorcery, and not as science fictional. And so one of the things we've done is we just changed the nomenclature. So we don't use the metapsychesis and all those types of constructions. And so one of the things, for example, that psychic magic differs from normal magic in is that instead of the verbal and somatic components, psychic spells have a thought and an emotion component. And so, for example, if your wizard is tied up and there's a spell that requires a somatic, you know, wave your arms in the air or something, he can't cast the spell. If a psychic is tied up and he can still think, he can cast the spell. On the other hand, if the spell has an emotion component, if he's under the effects of mind control or something like that, he is not going to be able to cast that spell. So there's a little bit of difference there. One of the other things that's really cool, and probably the most techy innovation, if you will, in Occult Adventures is the Kineticist class. The Kineticist is not a spellcaster per se. The Kineticist chooses one of 5 elements: air, water, fire, earth, or ether, and kind of almost like in a Last Airbender sense, like is a master of that element. So you can shoot a ray of fire, or you could like eject a flume of water that makes you fly, or you could create a big ball of air that just percusses to your enemies. And so you have lots of powers about shaping elemental effects that look kind of like spells but are not spells. So that class probably resulted in about half of the total posts in the playtest forums and things. And so far, since the subscribers started getting PDFs a couple of days ago, it's really dominating the online discussion as well. So that class has really touched a nerve with a lot of people. So I think the Kineticist is going to end up being a really popular class. And answers that something new aspect. I actually think the whole book does that. You know, one of the other reasons I'm really excited about Occult Adventures is if you look at the last several books Pathfinder has put out, the hardcover rule books, the previous one we did was Pathfinder Unchained, which is kind of all about how do you take the existing Pathfinder rules and maybe do things slightly differently. So maybe there's a different way you want to do level progression, or maybe there's a different way you want to do combat, or we offered 4 alternative ways of doing different classes. So we had the Unchained Monk, the Unchained Rogue, the Unchained Barbarian, stuff like that, Unchained Summoner. So that book was all about taking existing rules and modifying them. The book before that was a strategy guide, which was all about an easy entry point to the core rules. But again, sort of modifying the rules as they already exist. And even the book that we put out at Gen Con last year, the Advanced Class Guide, which has 10 new classes and a lot of new information in it, each of those classes is fundamentally a combination of 2 existing classes. So for example, the Skald is part Barbarian and part Bard. So again, it's about playing with the existing tools. Occult Adventures is about introducing a whole new set of tools. So I think in terms of like, as a game matures the way Pathfinder has been maturing since 2009, I mean, we've done a dozen books, and I think the question is always like, okay, well, what, you know, is this really new? Is this, you know, how is this different? And Occult Adventures is the newest and most different thing we've done in over a year, and I'm just really excited.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I kind of thought the Advanced Class Guide was kind of new and different.
Well,
but
yes, it was.
You just took things that were out there and and made them more relevant.
Right.
Whereas Occult is a lot more ground level.
Yeah, I mean, you can just be like, it's a new class, you know, and it's not like a spin on an old class or a combination. It's a full-on new class. And if you look at something like the Kineticist, it's a really new class. It's a totally different design paradigm than what we're used to in the game.
I've been trying to design my own Kineticist for a long time.
Oh yeah?
And failing.
Well, so you can use ours.
I can use yours. And then this fall, is it fall or is it Christmas? Bestiary 5.
Bestiary 5 is coming out in November of this year. It's the 5th big monster book. We've done 320 pages. It's got over 300 monsters in it. And one of the things that we've learned is there is no shortage of awesome monsters in the world, whether they're ones that are created by the Pathfinder staff, ones that we've sort of combed out of mythology, or even sometimes just ones where it's like, well, you know, we don't have enough high-level plant monsters. Let's fill that kind of hole. In each time we put out a new bestiary, I think the audience, and some degree even I, am like, you know, bestiary 5, like, what monsters are going to be in this one?
Right.
But the answer is there's still really awesome monsters. So like, for example, on the cover of Bestiary 5, we've got the Grim Reaper. That's a pretty key monster that we've never done before. We've got lesser versions of the Grim Reaper as well. We've got the Greys, you know, the kind of common aliens. They have mental probes. I want to be clear about that. And then we've got deep ones, you know, H.P. Lovecraft's deep ones. These are pretty key monsters that we just haven't gotten to yet, you know, and there's a whole new set of what we call the esoteric dragons. So there's dream dragons, there's astral dragons, there's a lot of cool stuff. And we just sent it to the printer last week, and as we're flipping through the final pages with all the art and everything totally laid out, I was just really taken aback by, like, yet again, there's a bunch of awesome monsters. And then there's a couple of monsters where you're like, whoa, what is the deal with that? And then someone in the office will be like, well, that's actually from, you know, ancient Mesopotamia or something. You're like, oh, that is awesome, you know. So, like, we'll probably never run out of cool monsters.
I don't see how you could. I mean, just with myths, I mean, there's so many different stories, and then, anyway. So there's the card game too that's doing all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah, Pathfinder Adventure card game continues to go strong. We've got three campaigns out for it. We've got The Rise of the Rune Lords, which is the first one. We have Skull and Shackles, which is the pirate-themed adventure path. And then we recently just released The Wrath of the Righteous, which is the fight against demons as they invade from the abyss. It also ties in some of the mythic approach that we did with that campaign in the RPG realm. So Wrath of the Righteous introduces mythic power to the card game. In one way it does that is it introduces a 20-sided die, a sort of mythic surge die. We're releasing Adventure decks for that on a monthly basis right now. We're doing monthly class decks, so they add 3 to 4 different takes on, say, the Barbarian or the Wizard, and you can play those with any of the campaigns. They're also usable in the Pathfinder Adventure Card Guild Organized Play program that we launched a few months ago, and that's going strong here at the show. And next year we're going to be doing the Mummy's Mask. So the next Pathfinder card game campaign is Mummy's Mask. Don't have an exact release date yet in 2016, but it will be in 2016.
Okay. So what's the big game here that you guys are doing? You guys always do special all hands on deck kind of role-playing session.
Yeah, we've got a couple of them actually this year. We've got in the Sagamore Ballroom, we've got 4 special events this year. And among those are we're kicking off the Year of the Serpent. And the Year of the Serpent storyline is all about the hated enemies of the Pathfinder Society, which is the Aspis Consortium. And so that conflict has always been kind of in the back shadows of the campaign, and this year we're bringing it forward in a big way. And so, for example, we're doing a giant interactive that has over 100 tables playing the same event at the same time. And it's going to be the Grand Convocation, where the Pathfinders gather every year to share stories and things. And the Aspis Consortium is making a strike on the headquarters of the Pathfinder Society while everyone is there to try to take out some of the leaders. And over 1,000 Pathfinder players will all be cooperating with each other, working from table to table to make sure that doesn't happen. Later in the week, we'll also be playing a version, special event, with pre-generated characters, where the players will play agents of the Aspis Consortium fighting against the Pathfinder Society. So we're going to get people both sides of that conflict. We're also doing a fun adventure where everyone plays kobolds. I think that's going on Sunday. And we just got lots of other neat stuff going on in the Sagamore Ballroom. A company called Miniatures Building Authority was kind enough to donate a miniature scale village that's right in the center of the room, and we're calling it the Village of Sandpoint. And yet again, Sandpoint is being invaded by goblins, just as it was in the very first installment of the Rise of the Rune Lords adventure path back in 2007. But in this case, the players are playing the goblins, and you got to try and fight and kill as many of the iconic characters as you can during the 15 minutes assault on the village. So there's also the kids track. We've got 10 tables of children's oriented gaming every slot. We've got Pathfinder Adventure Card Guild play up in the Sagamore this year, and we've got they're debuting a new tournament style for the card game. So it's all a very cooperative game, but in this style, my table is cooperating kind of against your table that's cooperating, and we're working to do goals faster and better than our competitors. And that's a sort of play testing that tournament format and seeing, put it through its paces. And so that's a request that we've got from a lot of people is give us a tournament style for this game. So we're working on that.
I want to see how that unfolds, because it is.
Come on up to the Sagamore Ballroom and they'll show you.
That is interesting. That is so interesting. So, I've been told to ask people, since creating things is your day job.
Sure.
How do you stay creative?
How do I stay creative? I don't know, I read a lot, and I read a lot, not just like gaming and science fiction, but magazines, and I collect old books and read old books. I read, lots of stuff on the internet, deep dive research on different things. I was one of the consultants on Occult Adventures, for example. It's parallel to some of my own just reading interests, and so I read a ton about that, and you're always discovering new things, and then the next time you're working on a project, you say, oh, I'm going to take this thread from this old 1930s article that I read and kind of put a modern gloss on it. Mostly the way I stay creative is by constantly being on deadline and having to write. Necessity is the mother of invention. And so you can sit around just kind of thinking up ideas all day and never do anything with them, or you can work toward publishing them and you don't have a lot of time to do otherwise. So it forces you to continue to think on your feet. And then the other thing that I think is really important for gaming is just to play the game. I'm in 2 weekly Pathfinder campaigns, play it regularly, and that has been an incredibly useful experience for the writing and then just the management of the company as a whole to understand the product and to have a personal weekly relationship with it.
Yeah, that would always help. It always helps to know what you're doing.
Yes, that you heard it here first. It always
helps to know what you're doing. You can't just sit there and go, that might work. Playing helps so much. From experience, I know that.
Yep.
Gosh, I don't know. Well, your comic book, the one that you just finished.
Yes, Pathfinder Origins.
Yes, Origins. And you wrote, I don't remember which one. You
wrote the first and the sixth.
Last.
Yep.
And that, I talked to you, I don't know when I talked to you, but it was at its release date. So the 6th one is either about to come out.
It's about to come out, yep.
And so how has it done as a whole?
Very well. It's been interesting to get people's reaction. One of the cool things about the comics is that's really where we tell the story of the iconic characters, the Pathfinder characters that you see in all the covers and all the illustrations. And in particular, this series being Pathfinder Origins was our opportunity to reveal a lot of information about where these characters come from and what their background is. And I think that's information that, diehard Pathfinder fans really want to know. And so it's been very good. Dynamite is already working on a hardcover compilation, just like they've done with the previous series. Origins is interesting in that it was written by Paizo staffers. So I wrote a third of it. Our fiction executive editor James L. Sutter wrote another third of it, and then our editor-in-chief F. Wesley Schneider wrote the other third of it. And Dynamite was pleased enough with our efforts that the 3 of us are writing the next series as well. So that series is going to be called Pathfinder Hollow Mountain. Hollow Mountain is one of the most famous dungeons in the Pathfinder campaign setting. It's in Varisia, land of the Rune Lords. In fact, it was built by the Rune Lord of Wrath. And this adventure takes the iconic characters and sends them into Hollow Mountain. The entire 6 issues takes place within one dungeon. It's all about adventuring, it's all about deadly traps. One of the things Pathfinders discover in there is a rival group of adventurers that's made up of some of maybe, shall we say, some of our less scrupulous iconic characters. People like Celtiel, the Magus, Damiel, the Alchemist, Olak, the Blood Rager, and Meligaster, the Mesmerist. And something happens in the dungeon that separates all of these characters, but it separates some of the good characters with some of the evil characters on one team, and some of the good characters with some of the evil characters on the other team. And it's all about how do the iconic heroes that we've now traced through 4 or 5 series, how do they react when their teammates are sort of shaken up, and how do they react to the challenges of being with adventurers who are maybe a little bit less heroic than they're used to. So it's going to really put them to the test. We're in the process of writing that right now. The scripts for number 1 are done. Number 2 is being worked on, and then I'm writing 3 and 4. So I haven't started, other than concepting the series, I haven't started writing my script yet. But it's high on the docket when I get back from Gen Con.
And that'll be out probably spring again?
That's going to probably come out actually sooner. I think that's going to come out within a couple of months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's coming out, I want to say September.
So does the whole comic book thing kind of stem from your passion of collecting comic books?
Yeah, of course. I've loved comic books as long, or if not longer, than I've loved gaming. And so the opportunity to kind of put those 2 things together is really, really exciting for me.
It's all cool. And of course, there's stuff that happens with the miniatures line all the time.
Yep.
So what's the next?
Another passion of mine.
I didn't know that. Just D&D, like tile miniatures, Pathfinder style miniatures, pre-painted stuff?
Me, in terms of my personal passions?
Personal.
No, I mean, I've been collecting miniatures my whole life, pretty much. And so I have unpainted metal miniatures. I have really
So you got a lot of the
expensive
old
resin miniatures. Yeah, I have some of the old Ralparthas.
So you're looking
I have some
forward
of
to
the
the
old
Halo
Grenadier ones.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but really lately, because I'm very busy at work, the pre-painteds are kind of where I'm at. And so the sad fact is, as the person who decides what figures go into all of the Pathfinder miniature sets, I could make up an idea for a Pathfinder Battles miniature set, send it to a team to do a digital sculpt of that set, approve the digital sculpts, have another professional miniature painter paint the paint masters for it, have those paint masters sent to China, have the factory do a complete run of the entire set of 45, 50 miniatures, and deliver it back to the Paizo offices in the time that it would take me to paint one miniature. So my perspective has really changed a little bit. So we just released a set called Dungeons Deep for Pathfinder Battles. That is a dungeon-themed set. It's got new dungeon dressing, which is a new type of figure. So there's like a sarcophagus and an Iron Maiden and a chest and a bubbling cauldron, sort of like set pieces that are special inserts, so you get one per case of each of those figures. And that was an experiment we're going to continue with the next set, which is called the Rusty Dragon Inn, which is a tavern-themed set. That's going to come out in November as well. And of course, we're still doing the Iconic Heroes sets, which are really super high quality sculpts and paint jobs. They come with cards that are playable in the Pathfinder Adventure card game. And we've done 3 sets so far, and we've got several more coming.
So, the first set came out before the card game.
Well, we did one called Beginner Box Heroes several years ago. And then the first set for the Iconic Heroes, which has some of the same figures, is post-release of the card game.
Okay. So the cards were eventually
always been a
available.
part of it, yeah.
Okay. So you're gonna do like more big figs?
Well, we just did fairly recently released let me pull them onto the camera here.
When we did this interview in your office, I thought he was bigger.
Here he is.
Probably because of your webcam. I thought he was a little bit
Oh, really?
bigger.
Yeah. No,
But he's still awesome.
He's nearly life-sized. This is produced by a partner company of ours called Diamond Select Toys. And it's a vinyl goblin bank. So they have been selling very well. So maybe we'll do another one.
I'm sure they have. How do you get the money out?
Money? You pop open the back flap like that.
Oh.
Yeah. So you can put maybe about a couple bucks worth of change in here. I mean, it's kind of a sculpture as well as a bank.
Just use them as a giant like gaming table.
I do have actually in one of the display cases in our booth samples of new Goblin toy that we're going to put out in a couple months.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
I got photos for you guys yesterday.
Oh, good. So we've been manufacturing that ourselves, and that's going to be coming out in a couple months. And it's about this tall. There's 5 different colorways of the sculpt. He has numerous hands and numerous weapons that comes with each figure. So there's more coming.
It's awesome. You guys just keep getting better.
Oh, thank you.
You do. I mean, well, I don't know. It's like a lot of your stuff. People, I hear both sides of the spectrum. People are like, oh, it's going to be another Pathfinder book. And then you get the book and it's like, wow, it's really pretty good. It's not just a thing to make money. I mean, you have to make money as a business.
Yeah.
But it's not just that.
I try really hard to not just have kind of like slot fillers, where it's like, okay, what are we gonna do now?
Which you get
All right,
with
it's another book of feats and spells or whatever. And
which I think 3.5 was plagued with.
I think a lot of games struggle with it. I mean, there's probably some people who would say Pathfinder struggles with it. It's.
Well, I'm sure you do, but I think you just handle it a different way.
Well, I appreciate that. We certainly try. And again, I think it kind of comes back to playing the game. I think one of the things that I've seen in this business is it's hard work. It seems like, oh, it's fun to be a game designer, but when you spend all day, every day working on the Pathfinder role-playing game or any other RPG, sometimes the last thing you want to do when you go home is the same thing you've been doing all day. And so you can see as people are in the business longer and longer, sometimes they play less and less. I think it's very, very dangerous. I think that as long as you're playing the game, you have a better insight into kind of what table tools people need. You know, the NPC Codex book, for example, came about largely because like it's hard to make NPCs in Pathfinder sometimes. If you could only just flip open a book, I need a 5th level paladin, boom, here he is. I figured that would be very useful for players. And that's what we're hearing from people. They really like that book. And so it's not just kind of like, well, let's just do what's always been done before. A lot of times it's just like, what do we want in our own games? And as long as that's the impetus that's driving the product decisions, I think you're gonna end up with products that seem fresh and useful to other people who are running the game.
That's a good way to do it.
That's how we've been doing it so far.
What you need and what you live, right?
Yeah.
Experience. You know, I mean, for me, I think it was Intercede Gods was the one that kind of made me look at your approach and realize that it was not just filler.
Yeah.
Because Intercede Gods, I mean, my degree is in theology. So with Intercede Gods, I'm flipping through it. I'm like, about halfway through, I'm like, you know what they did here? I go, they took faith and they made faith something for every PC or NPC.
Not just clerics or whatever.
And by doing that, whatever their faith is, because faith is just a belief, comes to the forefront and means something to the character. There's so many fighters where it's like, I don't need to worry about my faith or whatever.
Right. Well, and it's interesting too because if you sort of contrast, you know, the fantasy world of Pathfinder with the real world, you know, in the real world, faith is very much the appropriate term, right? Because you can interpret things as signs of divinity or what have you, but it's a lot of it's here and a lot of it's here, right? In the fantasy world, you can summon gods. You know, I mean, like these are, you know, it's like. One of the things I always wonder about is like, well, you know, what's it like on the other side of the world? You know, it's like you can cast a spell and be like, you tell me, you know, Iomade, and then they flawlessly answer the question. And when you have gods literally appearing in the world, it's not so much a question of like,
is there
faith as it is almost more like devotion to these like obviously manifest forces. Now we do have like atheism in our world, right? But it's a little bit different.
It's a faith.
It's true, but it's also just like I believe these entities exist because they're demonstrably exist, and I believe that they grant spells. But I don't know that I agree that that means that they're worthy of worship, right? So it's interesting to try to map our own concepts of faith and atheism or theism or whatever onto a world where it's like gods are totally real for sure. Like you can go talk to them and they talk back, you know. And so that's part of what Intercede Gods is all about. It's like, what is that world like?
That kind of told me what level you guys were trying to reach.
We're going to do a book in September called Intercede Races that kind of does the same thing
I've been looking forward
to the different races in the world. And so there's extensive sections on not only like elves and, you know, goblins and dwarves and stuff, but there's also all the different human ethnicities in the Pathfinder world. And some of the odder ones like rat folk and plant people called the Gorons and the Strix, the wings, sort of owl-looking people. And we've really like broken it down and contextualized it. We did a couple years ago a book called The Advanced Race Guide, and that was very mechanically oriented. That was a Pathfinder role-playing game book, and it was like, how do you want to kit bash new, you know, favorite class abilities for elves or what have you. This book is much more like, how do elves and Golarion interact with humans and dwarves, and what's their history, and like, what does it mean to be an elf in the world? It's more about the world.
Oh, I was going to say more about their character as a race.
More about their character as a race rather than their character as mechanics, if you will. So if you liked Intercede Gods, Intercede Races is very much in
I like the Advanced Race guys too.
Well, hey,
I did like it. Well, you also did one of the thin books. I don't remember the title, and it had like the Bastard Races.
Bastards of Golarion.
No, that wasn't thin.
No, that was the thin one.
That was? Was that the one that had the little like, if you have this half race? Yeah, that was it. That was it.
Yeah. There's some of that in this book.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Good.
That was like, yes, somebody finally did something like this.
Well, poor half-orcs and half-elves, they always get the short shrift.
They do. They do.
But we wanted to make sure that we gave them as much focus as they deserve.
And they do deserve it. It's like they always get sloughed off in all kinds of fantasy.
Right.
It's just
The poor guys.
yeah, they do. It's like they're half-orc.
Isn't life hard enough for a
and-
half-orc?
Well, what about the half-dwarf?
I don't think we have half-dwarves in our world.
Nobody really says it, but I'm sure
Dwarves
they're
breed
there.
true in half-orc.
I'm sure they're
half
from
dwarves.
war.
Well,
Or what about the half-dwarf orc? The dwarf.
the dwark. I think you're gonna have to go to a different game to get your dwark. Get your dwark on, so to speak.
It's your dwarf. Well, is there anything you want to add?
Not really. I'm very excited about the products that are coming out. Fans are reacting really well to it, and we're just gonna keep on keeping on.
All right. Well, thanks, Eric.
That
It's
was a
been
pleasure, Matt.
It's always fun.
Have a great Gen Con, buddy.
You too. Bye, guys.